Director Asner?
Here.
Director Byers here. Director Faulkner?
Here.
Director Hudson? Director Mueller?
Here.
Vice President Petrov? Here. And President Cuneo?
Here.
And could we please all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that's that. First thing on the agenda, we have a motion for number 2.01, approval of agenda.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for 2.02, governing council election results?
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we'll move to 2.03, where we have the administration of the oath of office to the elected officials. These right.
All of them?
No, just
Just the new.
right, the new one. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Katie Boswell, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Missouri, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of school director in and for Special School District of St. Louis County, Missouri, to the best of my ability, according to law, so help me God. Hey, congratulations.
Thank you.
Everyone. All right, next we have 2.04, election of the president. Do we have a nomination for president of the school board for next year? I would like to nominate Cuneo.
Second.
And then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, 2.05, election of the vice president. Do we have a nomination for that?
I would like to nominate Katie Petrov. I think of that.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 2.06, election of the secretary. Do I have a motion for election of the secretary?
I nominate Amy Doyle.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
And 2.07, election of the treasurer. Do I have a motion for that? Nominate Jim Hoff. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 2.08, approval of the board education meeting norms. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, do I have a motion for adjournment of the organizational meeting, though we will go straight into the business? Do I have a motion for the adjournment? So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now we will pause. for that to be in there. Welcome everyone to the business meeting on today, Tuesday, March 8th. We'll start with a call to order. Director Asner.
Here.
Director Byers. Here. Director Faulkner.
Here.
Director Hudson. Director Moeller.
Here.
Vice President Petroff. Here. President Cuneo. Can you give a thumbs up, Dr. Terry? Oh, no. He's on. Okay. Oh, here he comes. You're on mute, Dr. Cuneo. You're on mute.
Sorry there. How about now?
You're good.
Good. I'd like to make a motion to excuse Tiffany. It's my understanding she is ill. And so I'd like to excuse her from the board meeting. Is there a
All in
second?
favor? Yes, Scott seconded.
Okay, great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next thing on the agenda is 2.01 Board of Education Recognition Presentation.
Good evening, Vice President Petroff, President Cuneo, Board of Directors, and Dr. Keenan. I'm Jennifer Henry, the Executive Director of Communications. This week, SSD joins districts around the country to celebrate School Board Recognition Week. Honor the service you provide to our community, volunteering thousands of hours each year to the district and the students we serve. Board members, you do so much more than just attend board meetings. As dedicated leaders passionate about public education, you provide vision and leadership to ensure that SSD students all learning abilities are able to excel at their greatest potential. In honor of your service, we would like to present you with some tokens of appreciation. Place, you will find artwork that was provided by the talented student artist in Jason Bencourt's class at Ackerman, Stephanie McCoy's class at Listinger. We also have a gift bag where you will find a North Tech keychain created by the Precision Machining students, keynote created by the North Tech Early Childhood Kids, acrylic SSD keychain created by the Design and Entrepreneurs South Tech High School. Last board meeting, you also were able to enjoy cookies that were part of your appreciation package made by the culinary students at. On behalf of our staff, we would like to thank you for all the work that you do on behalf of our students. Your leadership, encouragement, and advocacy are greatly appreciated. We also have this wonderful giant card that some of our early childhood kids shared that I wanted to. Can I have everybody come together so I can take a photo?
Sure.
Of course, that would be great.
Jen, you want us to bring our artwork?
That would be wonderful.
I think we should all just.
Absolutely. I was gonna say, we need to make sure that one gets. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Smile.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was lovely. Next, for 3.01 public comment, I don't think we have any public comments for tonight. So do we have a motion 4.01 to approve the agenda?
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Superintendents Report 5.01, the SEL and Trauma-Informed Support.
We have Dr. Bolton, who's going to report out on our activities around SEL support, social emotional learning, and trauma-informed practices.
Good evening, Dr. Cuneo, Vice President Patra, Board of Directors, and Dr. Keenan. My name is Molly Bolton, and I am the Executive Director of Teaching, Learning, and Accountability. And this presentation tonight comes from a request from Dr. Cuneo a while back to report out on the supports we're providing for social emotional learning as well as trauma-informed. Next slide, please. So again, the purpose is really to inform you guys of the ways we are supporting through professional learning, social emotional learning, as well as trauma-informed practices in our SSD schools as well as in our partner districts. Okay. So some of the ways we support through professional learning, we do coaching as well as additional support. So we do have two groups that really focus in on these areas. The first being our multi-tiered systems of support, facilitators, as well as our social emotional learning effective practice specialists, or SED. And those are the two groups that we have that kind of target both of these areas. When we think about targeted systematic support, that comes through our MTSS facilitators, and then more specific social emotional learning with trauma-informed practices incorporated in our social emotional. So we do a lot of targeted system support. If you remember last year, we had done a program review evaluation on our MTSS program, and really developed a stronger way to identify districts who were, looked at districts who were interested in developing multi-tiered systems of support, as well as those who may need more support. So if you remember from Dr. Hawk's presentation, our Tier 2, Tier 3 districts, and we give them priority if they're interested in support from us for building those systems. We also have lots of professional learning opportunities through learning cohorts where teachers have the opportunity to come together about best practices in social emotional learning and how to better support our kids with social emotional learning, especially those who might be supporting students with. We do functional behavior assessment. We have a systematic district-wide training that we provide, and that is not only to special education staff, but also to general education. We also have behavior intervention plans, and then a shorter system, if you will, if they don't require a full-blown functional behavior assessment. We have a tool called problem solving with function in mind. And then oftentimes we support school teams to use those for students who. We do a lot with mindfulness as well. We have 2 certified trainers in mindfulness, and we offer some mindfulness cohorts for our staff, and then to support those programs within the classroom. Some of the resources that have been developed that are available on our website are resource guides to talk about some evidence-based programs that are good to use in a systems-wide approach, as well as targeted more for social emotional learning. We also have intervention guides. We have developed social emotional quality indicators that we can use with schools who want to evaluate the quality of support they have for social emotional learning. And we also have a guide that was developed by our MTSS facilitators on integrating that trauma-informed care within a school system. Next slide, please. So some of the MTSS supports that we have provided this year We are working, as you can see here, the different districts that we are working with. One of the things that this team does is they go into the schools, the districts, and work with the leadership to determine what the areas of focus may be. So as you can see from the list up here, there are different things that different districts choose to focus on based on the needs of their students, based on where they are with developing their system. So these are the districts that we focused on for this past year and some of the supports that were offered to them. For our social emotional EBEPS support, you can see these are more district-wide, but we do also provide a lot of support and have requests from the partner districts to support general education with presentations on such topics as executive functioning, social emotional learning, and how to support students who may be struggling in those areas. We also do very focused data teams on social emotional and provide sources from our resource guide as well as our intervention guide that those teams can utilize to help support students. The SEB monthly meetings and rounds, those are where we focus in and do walkthroughs, if you will, to help support and make sure systems are in place in our classrooms to help best support our students. And then also quarterly cohorts really help our teams focus in on some of those best practices and also troubleshoot for areas that they may be struggling with or behaviors so that they kind of have a team approach from the outside, a nice lens. In our Academy 1, which is our new teachers, we do have some focused programs that focus on social emotional behavioral learning, and we do support the SEB EPSs do support those programs in years 1 through 3. In year 3, we also have a strand that new teachers can take. We kind of take the approach with our year 3, where teachers get to choose an area of focus for them. And so we do have a strand focused on social emotional behavioral. We also do that probably with some of mine that I do with gen ed staff as well as our special education staff, and work with our social workers through some of those trainings and practices and best practices as well. Slide, please. In our SSD schools, we just added an SEB EPS to our schools this year, and he is really focused in on some restorative practice and looking at restorative practice through that trauma-informed approach. We are doing some work with Ed Plus on that, and Greg Hungerford is the EPS for our school, and he's really been working then with the follow-through and the follow-up from those professional learning opportunities. And then he's also doing a trauma-informed monthly meeting at Bridges. So some things we have in the works. One of the things we have that we've been working on is revising the problem solving with function in mind. And the purpose for revising that is really to integrate some of the trauma-informed practices as well as culturally responsive practices into that system for teams to use. We are also going through our first cycle of improvement with MTSS on how we identify those targeted districts that they are working with. And we will be adding Normandy and University City this next year for support with those MTSS facilitators. MTSS is also working on looking at their professional learning opportunities, and we're using a theory of change and some strategic planning. Really look at restorative practices and that trauma-informed care to be integrated into the multi-tiered systems of support framework that we utilize with district support. And our SEB EPS group is working through the SRS right now and have developed some insight statements that we will be working on a plan for. And you can see those insight statements here. Improving staff development in the area of social emotional learning, improving, and fostering that staff mindset for problem solving and tolerance. And then also, skill development in the area of trauma informed, as well as making sure we're capitalizing on all the resources that we have, such as team meetings where we can hold some powerful discussions, building some capacity, and then supporting. That brings us to questions.
Anyone have any questions?
Dr. Bolden. First, I just really think this is so critically important. Obviously, coming out of COVID, and exposed for so many families who are struggling right now. First, I appreciate, I think mostly compliment, I appreciate that there's no one-size-fits-all approach here. It's faceted and according to the preferences of each partner school district. I also am curious, I think for a lot of our families, I've really benefited from reading some good books on this, and I'm interested in reading more. Would you mind very much creating kind of a book list?
Absolutely.
Short book list that we can put out on social media? Recommended reading on this?
Yeah, absolutely. We may already have that in the works, but I will check, and if we don't, we'll get one created.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
My question, Molly, is thank you for this report. I agree, it is probably something that we're going to really find appreciation in. But I would like to have, if you will, I'm interested in trauma-informed, knowing a little bit more about, when we talk about that, what are we speaking to?
So when we think about trauma-informed, we think about those best practices and making sure our staff are aware of the effects of trauma on students and the best way to address the impact that trauma may have on some of our students. We know that trauma is very individualized, and what might be traumatic for one person may not be for another. And so how do we recognize trauma? How do we then, after we recognize it, the best practices to use to support those students who have experienced trauma?
So far, what types of trauma are we finding an inconsistency?
I think it varies. I mean, I think
Are we
some of our
talking about
students have
trauma from being
COVID, being
experiencing
isolated.
COVID? Are we talking about trauma in reference to household kinds of scenarios more so than Trump than COVID? I mean, is there
I think
anyone
it spreads the gamut, honestly. I mean, we have students who have suffered abuse, all the way to students who may have anxiety because of a situation that they've been in. The social isolation from COVID, definitely we see some of our students dealing with that. So I do think, and that's why we have to look at lots of different strategies. We can't rely on just a certain type of strategies for trauma. We have to look at a wide gamut because each one of our students may respond differently to the trauma that they have experienced. So we have to have a lot of tools in our tools.
Are we finding certain age groups that?
We're finding that it's happening younger and
versus
younger, quite frankly. You know, some of our young students even have experienced some traumatic, I say it spreads across age groups, it spreads across our disability ranges, it's kind of all over.
I have a question, a few questions. One, could you give me an example of restorative practice? Mindfulness?
So one example that I can give you is, for example, when a student may have a meltdown in the classroom, right? And so a restorative practice may be to have a restorative circle in that classroom. Once that situation has de-escalated and they come back together and they work on building back those relationships that may have been harmed by that
the whole
incident.
class.
Could be the whole class, it could be it could be between two individuals.
Right, okay.
It could be a whole class, I mean, there's lots of different scenarios that could occur in as well.
Okay.
But that would be just one example.
Okay. And then my other question was, so, and you may have explained it and I may have missed it, how do one of our partner districts, I mean, this is amazing, so how does the partner district, do we approach them, do they approach us to say, could you come out and give us the tutorial?
As far as, like, MTSS support?
Yeah.
So MTSS support, yes. So we have, a series of indicators that we look at risk factors, if you will, with certain districts, and we rate, districts. So we're looking at distressed community, we're looking at, disproportionality, and many other factors there. We look at their achievement rates, as well as their student groups and how their student groups are achieving. And so there's different factors that we look at and rate them, and then we, based on their score, reach out to them to see if they are working on a systems approach. And if they are, we share with them what resources we can offer them. And then if they decide, yep, we would like to access this support, then we go in and have a planning conversation with them to really lay out, here's what we can do, here's what you will do, and we'll support. Yeah.
I have a question, a bit tangential, and again, it's one of those questions where if you don't have the answer, it's certainly okay to come back with it later today. But I'm curious about the functional behavioral assessments, the SBAs, and do you have any data on how many are requested, how long it takes districts to respond, both in our local, in our district schools and in the partner districts, and if there's a difference in terms of the wait times depending on district? I'm thinking of a particular family, one of our targeted districts. I'm told that. And I guess that's this is what the parent told me.
So you want to know how many FBAs we have been requested?
Yeah, and how long it takes us to typically respond to those.
I do not have that information.
Yeah,
but I can work to gather it.
thank you.
Yeah.
And again, is there a difference in terms of how long it takes?
Yeah.
Just for context, since we're in a public meeting, I say this because within my work, I often find that these themes are at least as effective as making medication change. I have a lot of interest in, helping these kids get these kinds of supports.
Dr. Bolden?
Yeah.
This is Dan Cuneo. At one time, we had Gene Griffin come out on this. And
Yes,
I know he's one of the gurus in this. Talked with him, and somebody had mentioned COVID. He had just presented a paper, he recently has an article out, but he had presented to the US Senate. They had asked to come up and speak. The article was called, and this is, I find, if you want, I can get you a copy. It's called Defining Trauma and a Trauma-Informed COVID Response, about what happens with kids and what it's like living with the sword of Damocles over your head and what happens over a period of time and how to deal with that type of trauma and what a system would. If you would like, I'm not sure I can get a copy of the testimony, but I know I've got a copy of the paper. Would you like it?
Absolutely. That would be a great resource to share with our team.
I will get it to you.
Thank you, Dr.
Are we
Any other
doing
questions?
anything else with Gene Griffin anymore, or have we decided that?
We are not at the time, but that doesn't mean we won't in the future.
Okay. Nice guy.
You all get copies of that?
Absolutely, we'll make sure.
Any other questions for Dr. Bolden? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent Report 5.02, Family Engagement and Parent Education Diversity Awareness, Rita.
So, good evening, Dr. Dr. Bonilla, Vice President Patra, Board of Directors, and Dr. Keenan. Again, I'm Molly Bolton, Executive Director of Teaching, Learning, and Accountability, and this time I brought a crew. So with me, I do have Alan Wheat, who is the Executive Director of Student Services.
Good evening.
I also have Adrian England, who is the Family and Community Outreach Manager, as well as Latricia Morgan, who is the Parent Education and Diversity Awareness Administrator. So we would like to present our work to you.
Okay, so the purpose of the presentation tonight is to update the Board of Education on the actions of the Family Engagement and Parent Education and Diversity Awareness divisions, as well as propose a merger of those two divisions into one consolidated division.
Good evening, everyone. I am Adrian England, the Family and Community Outreach Manager. And in our department, to create systemic and sustainable change within our district, we actually facilitate a family engagement leadership team that includes administrators from every building and two teacher leaders. In those meetings, we actually talk about evidence-based practices in family engagement that will impact student outcomes. We also use data from welcoming school walkthroughs to create change and family engagement surveys to really support our decision-making for family engagement practices. Recently, we developed a quality indicator tool for family engagement using different tools across the nation in family engagement. We also facilitate quarterly countywide family engagement meetings. So every district within St. Louis County is invited to come and share practices with us, for us to be co-learners and collaborators in this process so that we can have best practices throughout the county and so that families can receive the best care possible for their students, whether they are students receiving our services or students receiving general education. Family engagement is a broad practice and should be used for all students. And so we also know that in that practice that one of the biggest pieces is relationship building. And so we brought the opportunity to you to create the regulations for home visits. You guys adopted that for us, and so far, I think this data is from January, but there were over 400 home visits conducted by our staff this year that have been recorded. The family feedback has been above average to really talk about what they've experienced and how they felt respected and honored in their homes, and how they also received tools that would support their students' progress. Our department also facilitates over 40 professional learning opportunities that includes new teacher orientation, the academic cohorts for SSD schools, new admin, and various other departments and our partner districts when requested to do so. We also thought it was very important that as a system, as a school district, that we started to really build capacity, not just with our teams, but district-wide for us to see the value in family engagement and those practices and how we support families coming on board and partnering with us. So that's one of the reasons why we really wanted to champion Family Engagement Month, and we thank you for that resolution as well. Our data from the family engagement surveys really does define what we do. And so one of the lowest scoring components on that survey over the last 2 years was actually community outreach. And so as a result of that, we reached out to several agencies based on social worker feedback on where they're being asked to seek the most referrals and resources. And then we developed relationships or existing relationships, but we actually brought them into the lunch and learn opportunities so that we could archive that information, so that we can also have a contact person to directly refer families to. We want to make sure families have a warm transfer instead of just a cold phone number. So we also partnered with the Special Education Foundation a few years ago to create the Critical Needs Fund. What I learned when I came into this position about 5 years ago was that many of the nonprofit agencies that partnered with other schools in St. Louis County had no idea we had schools. Like, they really didn't know we had students that needed this type of support. And so the Special Education Foundation developed the Critical Needs Fund to meet our specific needs. And to date, we've served over 160 students and families I can tell you that the program has probably only denied 2 requests in the entire time. We also have received grants from the Department of Mental Health. Myself and 2 other people in the district that I know of are youth mental health first aid trainers. And so every year the district supports us in developing other trainers or other first aiders throughout the district. We received 2 grants this year, and one of those we dedicated to providing those trainings specifically to families. And as soon as we sent that request out, all families filled those seats. So we will have that training March the 19th for families. We also participate in the Children's Service Fund to really talk about mental health and crisis in our community. And as another piece of data-driven practices, we created the Family Resource Hub at North Tech to create an opportunity for families to use technology, to have a satellite food pantry, and also just get support with community resource navigation. Our department was built, and the purpose was to build capacity with every staff member within SSD to really engage families. And so even though we want all staff to do that engagement, we don't necessarily step in often for one-to-one interactions, but when schools need that intensive service, they do contact us. So we do support families with ongoing case management and support, coordination of external agencies and community resources, but we also try to really support our schools and administrators to maintain that contact within the school. And so they created the Link to Learning events in SSD schools, as well as parent and family engagement events throughout the school.
Good evening to each and every one of you here this evening. My name is Patricia Morgan. I am the administrator here in Special School District, managing parent education and diversity awareness program with the acronym of PETA. So I just wanted to give a quick overview of the updates related to our program. And if you have more specific questions after we have completed our time with you, don't hesitate to reach out and ask. So we provide district-wide services. So that is with all of our partner districts in addition to our SSD schools. And you will see noted here with family education, that is, we facilitate workshops and trainings that are not only available for our students and our families, but we have it available and open to the community. And so with that, we have what is currently called the Parent Leadership Institute, or PLI, which you see noted here as Family Leadership Institute. So as a result of the merger, we will make reference to it as families because, as we know, the parents and families all look different nowadays. We have siblings who are the parents and leading the family. So we just wanted to make sure that we are covering all gamut, and we are actively facilitating our Family Leadership Institute twice annually, which is new as of last year. In addition to that, we have a strong support with our PAC, Parent Advisory Council, and we have expanded that in which our technical support is more in alignment with our district directors to ensure that we are building leadership not only for the SSD PAC, but in addition to our local PAC. The next thing that you will see noted is family consultation and navigation. And so what you will see noted there is with the time that's put in to consult with our families and those the looks that we get in terms of our website. Community engagement is where we serve with our Family and Community Resource Center, or FCRC, which was originally housed here at Central Office, but now it's at the Learning Center. A part of that community engagement is working with agencies throughout Greater Metro St. Louis area,
where twice annually we have our agency stakeholder collaboration group. And then educating families to make system change. Again, to date, we've had approximately 60 workshops that have been facilitated, nearly 2,500 participants to those workshops. And then when we look at Family Leadership Institute, we have approximately 260 graduates from 2007 up till last year, 2021. And at this time, we are in day 3, which will be tomorrow, for our Parent Leadership Institute. And we are very excited to see what leaders we help to emerge as a result of their participation. And in lieu of time, that's what I will share relative to updates with our program.
So, we're proposing a merger of these two very hardworking divisions, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate both of these groups for everything that they're doing for our community. Very meaningful work. So why we want to merge these two departments is that using a significant amount of experience over a lot of years, we've developed some awareness of what really makes a good foundation for family engagement. So we want to strengthen the connections to student impact. We want to align our resources better, build collaboration and expertise by benefiting from the strengths of each division. And we want to decrease the ambiguity in purpose between PDA and family engagement. We understand that when there's multiple functions, sometimes there can be some confusion about who you call. So we really thought this was a good way to work together and really develop some greater strengths. I also wanted to mention that your artifacts and your printouts have some more detailed information regarding the information that was presented from Ms. Eaglin and Ms. Moore.
So, we are proposing that the merger, the new division title would be Family and Community Engagement, otherwise known as FACE. We came to this in agreement with both of these divisions coming together and talking through it. We feel that this name is recognized around the United States as, working with families and communities to engage them in education. So we felt like this name really would work for the purpose of what we want our work to represent. Next slide, please. So the organizational structure that we are looking at is, as they come together, they will fall under teaching, learning, and accountability. And you can see, as it stands right now, with these coming together, we would then have Adrienne England as the Family and Community Outreach Manager, Latricia Morgan as the PETA Managing Administrator, Deb Fiasco, who is a PETA Liaison, a 10-month administrator, and then the Supports and Liaisons, Michelle Franklin, who is currently our Family and Community Outreach Support, which is a 10-month position, Kim Redden, who is PETA Liaison, and Emily Lebu, thank you, who is also a 10-month liaison. And so we would be bringing them together, not eliminating any positions, and at this time, until we see how the merger works together, we're also not adding any positions.
So the foundation of our work, and we mentioned that earlier, as one of the reasons for the merger, is that through our work over the years, we've ascertained that family engagement is a shared responsibility, which is inclusive of all of the people and organizations across a child's life for their entire young adult, all the way to their adult life, and in every place that they are. That really high-quality engagement is everyone for their entire pre-adult life, everywhere that a child is working to grow and develop. Next slide. So, to that end, the shared responsibility, some of the tasks that we have that lend to the foundation that we discussed is develop definitions and policies, onboarding processes, community partnerships, including the agency stakeholder collaborative, the Special Education Foundation, Lunch and Learn, the FCRC, Family and Community Resource Center, and the Family Hub, and the Family Engagement Countywide Collaborative. For relative to their entire life of the child, we have the Family Leadership Institute to help build stronger partnerships between families and assist families in understanding and supporting their child's growth and development. The Parent Advisory Councils, and again, that's an expansive effort where we're really adding additional supports into Parent Advisory Councils in multiple districts and aiming towards all. And the self-determination, transitioning family engagement committees. The cutting across all of the locations that a child is growing and developing. We have the Family Academy work and workshops that Latricia mentioned, and other community events to support families in interacting between organizations, schools, homes, recreational activities, really trying to tie it all together.
Next slide. The last couple of months, we have worked together as a team to build our vision. And so you can see here, this is the vision that we have developed. So really looking at those evidence-based strategies to really partner with our families, as well as developing the capacity of our school personnel to really look at how we can best plan for academic and life success for our students. Again, focusing around community outreach programs, around professional learning, developing those packs and making sure they have that ongoing support that they need to be successful, and then those direct support for our families as they may be needed and differentiating for that family. And then lastly, to really develop that efficacy within our families through the Family Leadership Institute or the Parent Leadership Institute, and then those family and community workshops. So some of our next steps. One of the things is both of these divisions are well known throughout the district and in the community. So one of our challenges will be, as we create this merger, to really market it and to help folks understand what it is and how we're moving forward. To that end, we'll be developing a communication and marketing plan, working with our communications department. We'll also be working together to really identify those areas that complement the work that each division is doing, and to really focus in and specialize in supporting our families. We'll be building community within the division. They've lived separately for a while, so we're going to build that common ground. And then that foundational knowledge as well as the skills to continue and promote that work moving forward. And then we'll also do some cross-training between the two current divisions so that we ensure we all have that foundational knowledge about the work that's been done and the work that we want to do moving forward. Now we'll open it up for any questions that you might have.
First, thank you. This was an excellent presentation. I appreciate you guys covering all the different aspects of two really very powerful groups. What is your idea of the timeline of this, and when might you be coming back to talk about staffing changes?
So our timeline, as far as rolling this out, would be the July 1. So we'll be working together with our current team and really, again, building that foundation, doing some cross-training, really focusing in on what our priorities might be, developing that marketing plan, and kind of move forward July 1. I really look at this first year being a kind of a growth year for us to really learn and figure out which priorities we really want to focus our time and energies on. So I don't look at us coming back for staffing right away. You know, I think as we get more into the work, which you'll get a report from us probably about this time next year. So if there were staffing needs, if we identified some, I think it would come through the next budget cycle, if we identify that as a need.
My question is, and maybe I missed it in trying to keep up, did I hear that any of these particular outreach services are going to be done on periodical basis by part of the district?
So, yes, as you look
What was
at
that periodical basis?
a periodic basis,
Did we say we were doing that on a periodical towards the outreach?
yes,
That periodical basis, once a month, every quarter, or
Quarterly. So,
quarterly?
yes.
and that has been a really powerful experience because we're bringing them together and they're learning from each other. So it really is a great networking opportunity for those districts who are part of that collaborative to really take best practices from each other, as well as us. You know, we get to reap the benefits, but also share the knowledge. So it's a very mutually benefiting meeting.
I just want to say, first of all, as now a current student of the SPLI, High is amazing. I highly suggest anyone, especially for me, having a student who's going to be graduating in a few years. Very important because as you guys wrote here in life assess, because their diagnoses don't end at 18. They don't magically go away when they become adults. So teaching the parents the resources in the St. Louis area for their student, for their child, after they graduate is immense. How are, it was probably here, educating our current teachers about in an IT meeting or when a parent says, you know, where would I go for X, Y, Z? Do the teachers know, oh, let me send you the link, and they can, you know, are they aware, are they in on all this? Because this is amazing.
Right, and that is part of the family engagement work that we have been doing, where we're building the capacity of our staff, and so that they do know those resources, and not only know just those basic community resources, but the specific resources that might be available to those families in the community that they live in. Yeah. And so, yes, that is a part of the process that we're already using with our family engagement committee.
Perfect.
At each school.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah. Thanks for your patience as I try to get it out. I know that I imagine there's an ideal as far as creating a face-to-face meeting with a lot of parents, creating a function or event with an agenda, and everybody understands the purpose and walks away with this wonderful, takeaway. But I'm curious because so many families are scattered or very busy, and the expression is life happens, and are unable to be at that event. What kind of strategies do you have to keep the engagement up with those folks?
So one of that Latricia group has done is with the CLI Institute. They were streaming. I remember when you asked previously about some data. They were utilizing a lot of different agencies to stream that. So we're looking at things from a parent's perspective, quite honestly, and meeting them where they are. And it looks a whole lot different than it did 5-10 years ago. Right. And so we are being very purposeful in recording our workshops and other presentations that we facilitate, and they are uploaded to YouTube where they can be accessed at any time. And sometimes people, they want to look at it again because it was just that good. But we are really trying to be very intentional in listening to our families and understanding how to best meet their needs. And so while COVID was a monster, it also taught us a lot of things, and that is going virtual is not going away. So we are just, we are trying to be fluid and change. We're open to any suggestions to how we can make that an even better experience for our families. I think another opportunity we had through the Lunch and Learn.
Yes, through the Lunch and Learns, we also created the same opportunities for them to actually go back to archived resources. But I also want to share with you that the SSD schools have done a great job of pivoting those opportunities for families to virtual opportunities. but they're also not missing opportunities to be face-to-face. So they are sending resources home to improve those strategies that they're working on in virtual environments so that families aren't missing out on those learning opportunities and partnerships.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, on 5.03, we have Dr. Hogg and the bid diversity program.
Thank you. Good evening, President Cuneo, Vice President Patroff, Board of Education, and Dr. Cuneo. My name is Jeff Hogg, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer. The purpose of this presentation is to follow up on an earlier presentation in the year to talk about MBE, WBE, DBE, and SDBE programs, how we can increase participation, and how we can increase that at a consistent rate of application as well.
Explain those,
Yes. The MBE is Minority Business Enterprise, WBE is Women Business Enterprise, DBE is Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, and then SDBE is Disabled Veterans Enterprise. And so then as we move through our bid diversity program, we have two principles that go with it. One is so that we can provide an equal opportunity for companies to perform projects, and the other is so that we can ensure the district does not deny that equal opportunity as well. Next slide, please. And so as a district, we have a recommended goal of 15%. We'd like, if we can't award the contract to an MBE, WBE, DBE, or SDVE, we'd like that 15% participation. And a lot of times that takes the shape of a subcontractor or an additional firm that's going to do some work. And so we take a look at that, and then again, that is true diversity when it involves all those groups. It's not just race, it's not just one group, but it really is an overarching way to get to that true diversity. And again, you can see there, to be an MBE, WBE, DBE, or SDVE, a firm must be certified by one of those four following agencies. So as we move towards that, so as we move towards and we ask for that 15%, we do ask that if a firm can't meet that, they at least have to show good faith effort. And sometimes the bids are too small, or it just doesn't lend itself to a company coming in at that point. But they have to show the reason why they couldn't work towards that 15%. And then if they can show that, the bid's fine. If they can't, then that bid is removed because they did not show that good faith towards that 15% goal that we've asked for. Next slide, please. And again, we do ask for demographic information. Section D, number 1, in each RFP that we put out, asks not only for a number of full and part-time employees, but for the percentage of employees, race, and ethnicity within that company. That does something for us, and it really shows the company that we are serious about this and that we do put some value in the diversity bid program. And so last time it was asked for some industry requirements. Missouri, the state of Missouri, asks that companies make a feasible effort for MBEs at 10% and WBEs at 5% respectively. The EPA requires 8 to 10%. Department of Transportation requires 10%, and Illinois requires 19%. We require 15%, so you can see that's above many of those averages, many of what other people are requiring right there. Next slide, please. And so, as we've done some work, not only myself, the purchasing department, and then collaboration with Dr. Macklin, we started working and seeing what we could really do to change our practices and become a leader in that. We're already one of the few school districts that do this, that look into this. A couple of the other school districts that do are at that 10% threshold, and we're at 15%. So we're already taking a lead in this, but we'd really like to make some changes. And so what we're looking to do is with each bid that goes out, we're going to take a look at the listing of MBEs and WBEs and send out our bid to them so that they're notified that they have it. and we're gonna do that through those 4 groupings, that, you know, that we just talked about. And then we're gonna highlight section, D, number 1, so that anybody who's applying really knows that that's important to us. If there's not as I mentioned, if there's not a good faith effort to include that 15%, the bid's thrown out. We're talking about maybe doing that as well with this section, so that we can understand the breakdown of the companies that are wanting to work with us. And then we'd like to create an MBE, WBE link, on the website to resources, so that not only the companies who may fit into that come to us, but then they also know where to go to get resources. And I'll explain a little bit more on that here on the next page. And then we'd like to create a guidance handbook as well. Next slide, please. And this is the part that I am really excited about with this. So we've reached out to the Women Business Enterprise National Council, as well as the Mid-States Minority Supplier Development Council. And what those 2 groups could do for our program is amazing. So we will then get to put our RFP on their sites, their regional sites. So we wouldn't be putting out our RFP for something in New York. You know, we would put it out and it's a Midwest regional site. So it does 2 things. It gets us more engaged and entrenched in this work, and it also gets our name out there to groups that may know somebody who could bid on that work in our area. So it really gets us out there. It'll provide access to a larger pool of MBE and WBE companies. And then this is what I like. This was the resources that these 2 organizations had, not only for us, but for MBEs and WBEs to learn from, was just astronomical. And so we'll, with your blessing this evening, we're going to join these 2 so that we have access to these groups. And we can start with training for us. If anybody knows of an MBE or a WBE, we can provide them direction here. It helps with grants, it helps with insurance, it helps with everything that may be a barrier at times to bidding. Plus, it just opens up the networking for us. And the part I really like is, as we did this early on, there were so many questions of, how do we do this? How do we grow? And we didn't have those answers. We didn't have those supports, we didn't have those resources, and we do now. There's conferences, there's online conferences, there's mentorships that we can get in to really take a look to make sure not only are we saying that we're doing this, but we can actually do it and grow with it and continue this program for our district. Next slide, please. And then the last thing we'll do, we'll create an annual report, and we'll provide it in July of each year. And it'll include the data for the MBE, WE participation application. We use 2021, 22 as a baseline, and then we'll bring forward where we think the program should go, and then get feedback for those goals from the board as well. I think we can really do some good things with this program as we move forward. So thank you all very much for your support on that. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions at this point.
I may not have a question, but I would like to make an observation just for our thinking. And I'm sure that this will sound a little bit different to some people, but my point being is, and I'm going to go back, after affirmative action, as you might well know, to fill those particular opportunities, we went into a quota system. And the term minority came into play because, of course, you have to include everybody type of mentality probably brought that to play. But the civil rights movement itself and the effort to undo the etiquettes of Jim Crow will basically push forward. Not to say that there were not other people involved with that, but it was to push forward for opportunities for individuals, specifically the Black American community, who had been disenfranchised. So then we went to minority, and what I'm saying is we've got a situation now where we've got minority, and then women were included as minorities. Matter of fact, in the quota system, some of you who are old enough remember that corporations, if they hired a, quote, minority female, meaning anyone other than an Anglo-Saxon female, counted for 2 strikes or 2 points opposed to 1. Meaning if you hired a black male or another ethnicity of male, that was considered as 1. But if you hired a female, and then she also was of a different ethnic origin, so now we've gotten to the point to where we have, and the percentages you're talking about, we've got MBEs, minority, which women are included into that term in reference to civil rights legislation. But since that time now, women have come with a particular designation as women. So it seems to me that that means women get 2 bites at the apple, opposed to it being a situation to where minority is a specific group of people, opposed to WBEs being that's a specific group of people. So I'm bringing that up so that hopefully as we develop our equity, that these things may sound small, but they can be very meaningful in reference to goals and objectives that we perhaps are trying to meet in being able to be more inclusive. Okay? So I just want to bring that out because, again, we've gone to where there is a specific designated category now for just women. There's never been a specific designated category for African Americans. They get lumped into a minority scenario. So I just want us to be cognizant of that, so that as we in turn pursue these goals and biddings and other scenarios, I think that we would do well to make that distinction in accomplishing the kinds of things we say we want to accomplish. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you for this. I'm curious, on page 4, there's mention of the different categories of firms and there being a combined, I have a question about the language, about a combined goal of 15%. That to me is, well, a goal. But later in slide 7, you mentioned, bring up the word requirement, required percent. Then there's all additional language in slide 7 about making good faith efforts, make every feasible effort. So I'm just hoping you can clear that up. Is it a requirement? Is it a goal? And slide back to slide 4, it includes all those categories of firms, but then we switch to just minority and women on slide 7. So that's what I'm asking. Can you clarify what the defining standard is that we're going to be trying to attain?
Yeah, so right now, and you're correct, it does run that gamut. So when we look at a combined goal, we look at some of our bigger projects, where we're looking at 15% of the work to be done by an MBE, WBE, DBE, or SDBE. And that is a goal for us right now. It's not a limiter, and it doesn't define the scope of the project work. It's a goal, so that if they include it, that's everything we want, but it doesn't say if it's not included, it's not required. So then when we look at page 7, and the state of Missouri says make every feasible effort, that's their way of bringing up the inclusion or the suggestion of 10% and 5%. Then the EPA requires, so 8 to 10% of their projects require that. And so right now we do have that goal, and what I think that could do, and I don't know if we get to the point where down the road it becomes required, but I think what joining some of these other organizations does allows us a lot more education and a lot more strategy to move towards some of those more required goals or higher participation.
That's something that I think would be good for us to aim for, is to bring that required standard rather than just a goal and slide if that goal isn't reached.
Right. I think that the big thing around this is to, you know, with the group looking at this, is to see what the viability around our bids and how many industries around here are actually able to satisfy some of our goals, because at the same time, there is that, if you require it, then you deny the bids, and then you have nobody to do the job. So that's where you have to look in terms of, we are running a very large school system. We need to have things done at a certain time level, and we're going to make sure that we have all of these requirements. However, in some cases, there's just not going to be, if they have no bids that even meet this, if we say we deny it, then who's going to do the job for us? And that's where we're trying to figure out the balance around that. With the other part of it is we're hopeful that we actually do have more viability around this with organizations, with small businesses, and being able to reach out to them to be able to track that so that we can meet these goals. So that's where the balance out to find out, getting used to what are we looking at year over year? What does it look like with our larger projects? What does it look like with our smaller projects? To make sure that we can ensure that they are well informed so that we can attract these type of organizations. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Last on the superintendent report, 5.04, the school's COVID mitigation plan.
Good evening, Dr. Cuneo, Vice President Potroff, Board of Directors, Dr. Keenan. My name is Kelly Grigsby. I'm the Executive Director of Schools and Programs. I'm here tonight with Kevin Anders, Executive Director for Career Technical Education. Tonight we bring you new information. So we're not just going to go over the same old plan. So that's something to get excited about as we listen for. Yes. So tonight we're going to bring you some recommendations, some changes that we can make. But first I want to hit the high points of the plans that we have in place currently. Remember, we put a plan into place to make sure that we would keep our students and staff safe, as well as visitors. Our responsibility is and continues to be to create and maintain an environment where students can learn. And we continue to comply with state, local, federal guidelines. And as you know, the CDC released new guidelines specifically around masking requirements on February 20th. Next slide. The current provisions in our current plan address masking, which is currently 100% masking requirements indoors regardless of vaccination status. Social distancing to the greatest extent possible. Self-screening, promoting vaccination. Also contact tracing and quarantining, cleaning. We review this periodically. And the full plan continues to be available on the website.
All right, so on the next slide, you'll see a recommendation that we're putting forward as far as a proposed revision to our masking guidelines. The recommendation is as of March 14th for SSD schools, sites, programs, and buildings. We adopt what you see in the chart below, where there are two zones. So there is the green zone. When we're in that state, masking is optional in our schools and buildings for students, staff, and visitors. The COVID positivity rate in that building would need to be less than 1.5% for students and staff, and the St. Louis County community transmission level has got to be low or medium as determined by those new CDC guidelines released in February that Dr. Grigsby referenced. If we are in red, masking would be required in SSD schools, buildings, and sites. That would mean that the COVID positivity rate in that specific building is equal to or greater than 1.5% of students and staff, or the St. Louis County community transmission level is high as determined by those CDC guidelines. So either one of those pieces could trigger a masking requirement, and we would remain with masks on until we move from red to green. The VSP and CBVI programs which are housed off-site, will continue to follow the guidelines for their site or location regarding masking. The number of students in a VSP site is relatively small, so if you had one student who tested positive, you'd be above that 1.5% threshold. We've got dozens of sites all over the county. It's just a little bit complicated to manage that there, so we're going to default to what is going on at that individual work site and follow and take their lead. Next slide. So some other revisions, we made some few minor changes. We adjusted the masking on buses, again, to comply with new changing regulations. So it would mirror what you saw in the proposal for inside the buildings, would be the same as on school buses. We will remove the special area and transition language. We had some language in the plan before about how we'd handle transition and bell times and those types of pieces. And now our buildings have really gotten into a routine and we really don't need that in the plan anymore. A little bit clarifying on the contact tracing process and exactly which CDC guidelines we're following, so just updated the hyperlink on that one. Adjusted some of the language involving cleaning, removed the language about the frequent cleaning of high-touch surfaces. We're not wiping down doorknobs anymore or going around and cleaning light switches throughout the day. We are deep cleaning at the end of the class day, but not throughout the day. We removed the language for virtual family meetings. We've now reached the point where there are just some meetings that need to be in person. There's just not a way to do that meeting virtually by the nature of the meeting, so we removed that language. A virtual option still, whenever possible, is out there, just there are some certain circumstances where we need the individuals to be present. And then we removed the social distancing language for group events to comply with what the new and evolving CDC guidelines are. Next. Question.
So if this is approved, that we would fill out the communication process starting tomorrow, so we'll notify all of our families. We felt that giving families up until Monday a little bit of lead time on this, so that we're clear on what the expectations are. We do know that we might have some families that might say, let's try this out earlier, but we'll work with them on that throughout this process. But I think right now, since we're sitting almost a zero right now with our SSD sites and programs for positivity rates, so we feel very comfortable that this is a direction that we can move in.
Additionally, we've surveyed our families for our sites and programs, and of the families who've responded to that survey, we've had about 500 responses for those students. About 90% of them are vaccinated. So our vaccination rate amongst our students is very high, and our transmission levels are very low.
One thing I would say is that with our mitigation plan that we've had since, when we reopened schools, we did see that we were keeping our schools safe, especially with our population of students, with our higher needs medical students, or just our students in general in our SSD schools, we felt that we felt that in-person learning was as valuable, so we really did see that the mitigation plan did work. We do feel that right now that because of the COVID cases have gone down so quickly and so fast, and they have stayed there for the last couple weeks, that we feel that, being able to monitor that and try to pivot as we need to as the situation changes.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we move to the approval of the consensual items. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're down to action items. For 8.01, do I have a motion for the school COVID mitigation plan?
So moved.
Second.
Any second questions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have a closed meeting for the Board of Education on March 8th, right after this meeting, and then on April 12th at 7 p.m., and we'll need a roll call for that. Any motion?
I make that motion. Is there a
Thank you,
second?
Dr. No. Do we have a second?
We need a roll call.
Yeah, we need a roll call. Director Asner?
Yes.
Director Byers?
Yes.
Director Faulkner?
Yes.
Director Mueller?
Yes.
Vice President Petrov? Yes. President Cuneo?
Yes.
Next, we need a motion for the approval of minutes. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. For board regulations? Okay, yeah. All right, thank you all for being patient. Next, we have the executive meeting action items. The following items were approved during the executive meeting on February 22nd. Number 1, employment, resignations, retirement salary adjustments, 1 contract salary request, employment of extended school year and summer program staff for the summer of 2022, and 1 settlement. Are there any board communications at this time?
Only thing I'd like to say is that I had attended the autism, it's a quarterly meeting. And in the years that I've attended that meeting, I have never had one that was so spirited in a good way. The parents with the kids with autism, they were unbelievably wonderful, and with ideas of how to help their children and other kids learn. I thought it was one of the best meetings I've attended.
Thank you, Dr.
My hat goes off to Jenny, who ran that meeting.
Dr. Paul?
Okay, I'd like to be able to give a little bit of overview in reference to this yesterday's session with the Missouri School Board Association in Jefferson City. The meeting was called because there are a number of issues that are coming up in education. Of course, we've got a lot of bills that are being introduced. And outside of the latter part of the evening where we went to the Capitol and met with some of the legislators regarding these bills and their votes. But some of the interesting things that we talked about, HB 1747 is one, as well as 1750. Are recall petitions for, as you know now, we're getting to the point that being a board member for a school district is being politicized. Those 2 particular pieces of legislation call for a petition that can be had 30 days, within 30 days of the election. They also are looking to move elections to November so that those votes take place at the time when other issues. They're also looking at extending terms of board members to 4 years. And therefore, you would have, in a 7-member board, you'd have 4 or 5 of those that then on even years, and the other 2 would then get elected on odd years. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the recall petition can be had for practically anything. I mean, it could be as much as a board member didn't return a phone call. And there could actually be a petition stimulated within that 30 days. It requires 10% of the votes that were cast for the petition to be valid. And it's in November. So if the elections are in November, that also is Thanksgiving month, followed by Christmas. You have to believe that someone would really have to be intense to be able to take it and put forth a petition for a recall during that time, opposed to trying to plan for their families Thanksgiving, Christmas. We also have, in that situation, another bill, which is a House bill, that declares parties. They're asking if the bill passed that we as school board members have to declare our parties. Again, that situation is one that created a lot of angst because, of course, in doing so, depending upon, for example, depending upon the area that you're in, it's a red area, blue area, a school board member can be eliminated from serving based upon party. Also in this situation, it brings about, in trying to gain more votes, and if you're going to, if they move it to November, now you're going to be at the bottom of the ballot with all the top tier elections at the top. So that means that now you would find yourself having to go out and campaign to raise higher name ID, which means that you probably now have corporate getting involved, because now you've got to go raise money to the tune of $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 for a non-paying job. Okay? So we had some lively discussions around those particular issues. We have one where that HB 1858, that a district can be punished because there's another couple in here where if they don't comply with certain regulations of DESE, they can be punished in that compliance, and money's withheld from those districts because of some of these other aspects of this election taking place, coming into play. Then that was also something that we were very much concerned about. What else we got? CRT, of course. The expansion of charter schools. There's a bill that calls for the expansion of charter schools in St. Louis and Kansas City. I think St. Louis is kind of out of it, but and it's interesting because Kansas City just got its accreditation back. So now if you're looking at trying to expand public dollars in Kansas City, then what does that do in the efforts of a school district who's trying to regain its status, to have the competition so greatly now placed on it with charter schools as well as possibly private schools? For the bigger points, I think, that we discussed, there were lots of other different bills that came into play while we were there. Probably 200, maybe 250 people showed up. Of course, there were very few legislators to actually talk to. So I found it interesting. A few of us were able to gain some audiences and share some perspectives that hopefully resonated with many of the people there, because many of the people were from rural school districts. And oftentimes, as we often know, that rural school districts are challenged with, if not same, very similar and sometimes additional challenges that school districts in more metropolitan areas are not challenged with. So it was a very good meeting, and I appreciate the opportunity to have gone and represented us in that situation. There are a lot of people who still don't know about SSD, and they are astonished when they do find out what we do, how long we've been around. Some people thought that we kind of are a new entity in that. But I found that in my conversations that, like I said, we are a special district. And there's a lot of things that we do that if we ever decide that we want to franchise it, that there are a lot of people that I found on both sides of the state who would be very interested in having our input to help them regarding their IEP students. So that's my report.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Spencer? All right. 10.01, the calendar of events. You can read it 1 second when it comes on the screen. It is in front of you. Do I have a motion for adjourn? To adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Was your while going there?
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, I was aware of some of the bills, but of course,